This is Plant-Based Briefing, IPCC 6th Assessment Report 2021 by Bronwyn Slater at vegansustainability.com. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson, and this is the curated content Plant-Based Podcast, where I read to you a variety of plant-based and vegan articles with permission in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. This podcast is modeled after Justin Malik's Optimal Living Daily podcasts, which I highly recommend. And when I got the idea to start this podcast, I reached out to him for some advice, and he gave me some great tips to get started. And I also wanted to say thank you to listeners all around the world. Since launching in late April of 2021, I have followers in 62 countries around the world so far. So that's very cool, and please feel free to reach out to me with any feedback or suggestions. You can find my contact info at plantbasedbriefing.com. Today's article was actually written August 29th of this year, right after the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, released its latest report, which was 8 years in the making. And that report outlines a dire situation. And as a result, a lot of eyes on COP26, the climate change meetings going on last week in this. It's written by Bronwyn Slater at vegansustainabilitymagazine. They promote a sustainable lifestyle that meets our own needs without compromising the ability of other species to meet their needs for present and future generations. So now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. IPCC 6th Assessment Report 2021 by Bronwyn Slater at vegansustainability.com. The IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, released its latest report, 6th Assessment Report Working Group 1, The Physical Science Basis, in August. The report states that it is now unequivocal that human activity is warming the planet. 8 years of research went into the creation of the report, which also says that global average temperature will likely reach or exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming by 2040. Governments in all 195 countries who are members of the IPCC have signed off on the findings, which come just before world leaders gather for the COP26 summit in Glasgow at the end of October. It will ramp up the pressure on governments to provide clear action plans for how they will cut emissions, as the world is currently well off track to meet the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. Some of the findings of the report include evidence of observed changes in extremes such as heat waves, heavy rainfall, droughts, tropical cyclones, acidification of the open ocean, and increases in sea levels, and in particular, their attribution to human influence has strengthened since the 5th Assessment Report in 2014. Human-caused climate change has pushed up global temperatures from 1.1 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial average and is driving weather and climate extremes in every region across the world. Many changes due to past and future greenhouse gas emissions are irreversible for centuries to millennia, especially changes in the ocean, ice sheets, and global sea level. And unless there are immediate, rapid, and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, limiting global warming to close to 1.5 degrees Celsius or even 2 degrees Celsius will be beyond reach. In addition to the report, the IPCC has released an interactive atlas, linked here, showing how climate change will affect every world region under different emissions scenarios. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called the report a code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening and the evidence is irrefutable. Greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel burning and deforestation are choking our planet and putting billions of people at immediate risk, he said. The effects of worldwide temperature increases have been felt across the world in recent weeks. Wildfires have caused widespread devastation in Greece, Turkey, Siberia, and the U.S. West Coast, while flooding has killed hundreds of people in Germany and China. What needs to be done? The report says that the following steps need to be taken urgently. Strong and sustained reductions in emissions of carbon dioxide. Fossil fuels and deforestation must be limited as a matter of urgency. Global greenhouse gas emissions must peak in the next 4 years. Coal and gas-fired power plants must close in the next decade. Global emissions need to decrease by 25% by 2030 and about 50% by 2035. Limiting other greenhouse gases and air pollutants, especially methane, could have benefits for both health and the climate. Governments have a major role in setting the conditions under which lifestyle changes can occur through shaping policy, regulations, and infrastructure investments. Citizens need to be active participants in changing their lifestyles through taking steps to reduce personal emissions. And rich people in every country are overwhelmingly more responsible for global heating than the poor, with SUVs and meat eating singled out for blame. Animal agriculture and the role of methane. The report highlights the livestock industry as the single largest source of methane. Scientists say that methane reductions are probably the only way of staving off a 1.5 degrees Celsius rise. Cutting carbon dioxide is not enough. They say the world must act quickly on methane and switch to a plant-based diet. Going vegan is the single most powerful action you can take to reduce your carbon footprint. Methane, CH4, is produced by all farmed animals, not just ruminants such as cows, sheep, and goats, but also pigs and poultry. It is a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, almost 84 times more powerful using a 20-year time horizon, and is responsible for about a quarter of all global warming. But here's the good news. Methane is a very short-lived gas. It has a lifetime of only about 10 years compared to carbon dioxide, which has a lifetime of 300 to 1,000 years. This means that if animal agriculture was ended, we could achieve benefits from our cuts in emissions very quickly, as compared with CO2 cuts from transport and energy. Cutting fossil fuels like coal has a perverse climate effect. The particles of sulfur it produces shield the Earth from some warming by deflecting some sunlight. That means the immediate effect of cutting fossil fuels could be to increase warming, although protecting the Earth in the medium and long term. Durwood Zelke, president of the Institute for Governance and Sustainable Development and a lead reviewer for the IPCC, said cutting methane could offset that. Defossilization will not lead to cooling until about 2050. Sulfur falling out of the atmosphere will unmask warming that is already in the system. Cutting methane is the biggest opportunity to slow warming between now and 2040, he said. A third of global anthropogenic, i.e. produced by humans, methane emissions comes from animal agriculture. In Europe, it is 49%. The UN is calling for a 45% reduction in methane emissions, which would have many additional health and economic benefits. A transition to a plant-based food system would dramatically accelerate methane reductions. The IPCC suggests we have, at best, 5 years to slow the worst effects of climate chaos. What we can do as individuals. In its emissions gap report released in December 2020, the UN noted that about 2/3 of emissions are linked to households. As well as adopting a vegan diet, here are a few more actions we can take as individuals in order to reduce our climate footprint. Have fewer children, cut down on air travel, cut down on car travel or buy an electric car if you need to travel by car, insulate your home, cut down on energy use in the home, install solar panels if possible, buy second-hand items instead of new, keep items repaired, join a free cycle group, eliminate food waste at home, and use your vote to elect politicians you know will legislate to address the problem of climate change. You just listened to IPCC 6th Assessment Report 2021 by Bronwyn Slater at vegansustainability.com. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson, and please share this with others who might benefit or who might be wondering, what's all the hype about COP26? Thanks for listening.